Sophie Treder with Treder Land Law. I am also a local land use attorney down here, and I want to welcome your board to our production consumption region. I'm here to ask you today to consider designating Sector C as having statewide significance, not just regional significance. This sector has been classified as MRZ2 since 1989, and in accordance with that classification, the County of San Luis Obispo had it zoned for extraction, and that zoning has been in place for approximately the last 25 years. They even zoned a mine buffer zone around the perimeter of it to help protect it from incompatible uses. Because of this zoning, only sparse residential development has taken place, and there are also two specific areas in that sector that are currently devoted to active quarries. The bulk of the deposit is undeveloped so far, and it is buffered by large tracts of ranch land which fall just outside of the MRZ2 zone. The Salinas River flows through the sector, but the surrounding terrain is quite hilly and steep with ridges, so properly sculpted mining activities will get the geological benefit of the river proximity without actually impacting or getting too close to the river. Sector C is adjacent to several state highways, including Highway 229, Highway 58, and of course Highway 101, which is a major transportation corridor in this state. Perhaps more importantly, this sector is adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad line, which runs parallel to the bulk of Sector C, including Sector C1A, potentially making it quite easy to transport material out of this deposit throughout the state at a relatively low cost to other PC regions that might find themselves short on high-quality aggregate. The sector is close enough to the cities of Atascadero, San Luis Obispo, and Paso Robles to provide low-cost aggregate for their needs and growth, but without impacting those cities or interfering with their spheres of influence or growth. As a whole, this PC region is somewhat isolated and without too many MRZ2 PC zones. If you pay attention to the maps in Special Report 215, a vast majority of those MRZ2 zones are in the Salinas riverbed or other sensitive areas, and so the actual potential for getting aggregate out of those, in reality, when you go through the permitting process, might be fairly slim, whereas with regard to Sector C, which you can see up there on the map, it is largely outside of the Salinas River, although as I said before, the Salinas River flows through it, so the aggregate there is of high quality but still obtainable. As I mentioned, Sector C1A in particular has two currently operating quarries, one of which has been operating for at least a decade, and predates SMARA, and continues to grow and will be expanded in the future under a pending application. And so the quality of this deposit and the demand for this deposit is quite well proven, particularly because of the delay in designating this sector. As I mentioned, it was classified in 1989 because of logistical issues that you're probably well aware of. The designation actually never took place back then. Now it has been, the classification has been updated. We're looking at designation, and this is a chance to preserve this sector, which has still managed to escape a large number of incompatible uses, and give it the highest protections under the law. One comment, I did make a submittal during the public comment period last August, and so I just wanted to make sure that that letter makes it into the public record in support of the statewide significance designation. And then turning momentarily to the CEQA issues that the speaker before me just mentioned, as a land use attorney, I certainly feel that there is no potential for a CEQA trigger here. As you know, as your board knows, the protections are already in place currently for this sector under Public Resources Code 2762D because the sector is already MRZ2. Adding this designation simply enlarges the scope of the balancing act that the lead agencies must now undertake when they approve a non-mining use. But they already have to undertake that balancing act currently. This simply says, now do they need to balance the needs against the region or the state as a whole. That in and of itself does not have the potential to impact the environment in a way that would trigger CEQA. I'm sure your board is well advised on this issue, but I just wanted to mention that into the record. Finally, I did have one last comment with respect to the changes or the proposed changes to the plates. I understand that those in particular on Sector C are being done to account for the utility corridors. Probably, although it wasn't mentioned, it's the state water project pipeline that runs through there. I just wasn't sure how wide we're talking about for that utility corridor. When the state water project put, or the state put that pipeline through, they of course went through the eminent domain condemnation process with each landowner. And of course, at that time, it had already been designated or classified NRZ2. So when the state did its condemnation, it made it relatively narrow. So for instance, on the proposed Las Colitas quarry that is just adjacent to the Santa Margarita quarry, the area that was condemned for the pipeline is 70 feet wide. It's 40 feet on one side of the pipeline and 30 feet on the other. And then the landowner specifically asked through the condemnation process that it be recognized that mining was a proposed future and anticipated use for the property, and that the pipeline be constructed in accordance with the correct engineering standards to allow for mining. And so we actually have condemnation paperwork from the state that recognizes the state's easement, but then also recognizes that mining is going to take place right around that easement. So I just wanted to make sure on the item that the width of the corridor that's being exempted here from designation matches the width that was actually condemned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carrie Johnston.